سعيدا كن فريدا عش بفخر في الحياة لا تبالي فالمعاني.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Brother Boonaa Mohammed with another episode of Hangout, where we hang out. Now, Sheikh Omar is very tired. He doesn't know. I'm so excited to be here with him right now because this is such a cool series we've started, and the topic I think is one that I wouldn't pick anyone better to speak about than him. Sheikh Omar Suleiman is with us. Jazakallah khair. Sheikh, assalamu alaikum. How's everything?
I'm not great, man.
You're doing okay?
I'm alive. I like how you're the only one that laughed and
I'm the only one who got it. And it took me a second, but alhamdulillah. Sheikh, we had a great discussion inside about 2014 in review and a lot of the the different issues that we saw Muslims kind of taking a stance upon. There were a lot of things in this year that affected Muslims and also affected non-Muslims that Muslims actually stood up for. But with the advent of social media, it seems like every day there's a cause, right? Every day there's a petition. Every day there's people standing up and signing up for something. Do you think we're being over-flooded with this, social activism that's taking place, especially amongst Muslims in the West?
Define over-flooded, if you don't mind.
I mean, do you think there's too many things happening? There's too many causes. Everybody's, tomorrow it's going to be, a petition around, people removing junk from their neighbor's backyard, and we're all going to have to petition and get behind them for that. I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot of things happening,
Well, I think it's definitely, there's something called, in activism, they call it analysis paralysis, where it's just too much, you're looking at everything and you get kind of pessimistic about the world and just whatever, I can't really do much. Rasulullah ﷺ says, may Allah have mercy on a man, rahimallahu imra'an arifa qudrata nafsi. May Allah have mercy on a man who knows his own capacity. Alima qudrata nafsi. He knows his own capacity, he knows his own limitations, he knows what he can and what he can't do. Allah will ask you about what's in your power, there's no doubt about it. And so, I think that it's great to get involved in many ways, as much as you can, inshallah ta'ala. I do think that sometimes we give ourselves too much self-importance in some ways, which is that I have to issue a statement on absolutely everything that exists out there. And I don't think that we value, how important it is for people to get involved in their own capacities within specific projects in strategic fashion and really put their hearts and minds to it. And me being involved, for example, if I'm involved with the BDS movement, with the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement for the Palestinian cause, that doesn't reflect a lack of care for the Central African Republic or Syria or Burma. What that means is that that's a capacity that I feel like I can work and I can put my heart really into and put ihsan into it. Whereas still not losing sight of what's happening in the world around other than Palestine and things of that sort. I also feel like there's no doubt that the people that are around you have the greatest right upon you. So your local causes are very important. And this is what I was saying inside, that you can't expect people to care for your Muslim causes. And I think it's offensive to people when the only time we demonstrate and protest and get angry is when something's happening 8,000 miles away.
Right.
Whereas they're in your backyard, 8 miles away, there's police brutality. There's social injustice. Where are you on that? As a Muslim, isn't that your cause as well? Right. Did the Prophet ﷺ suddenly ignore all of the causes of Mecca whenever he received revelation at the age of 40 years old? No, he was still very actively involved. No one would go to him with a cause except that he would take that cause up as if it was his own. And so I think you prioritize, there's no doubt about it. And there is room for expressing moral support on multiple things. So for example, there's a cause that might be minor, relatively minor, right? Nothing is really minor, right? But relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. Even trashing the street.
Even the trash in my neighbor's backyard that I keep throwing there.
Yeah.
Permission. Sorry about that, neighbor.
But that the moral responsibility of just saying, look, I'm there for you. I'm not unaware.
But let me ask you this. Why do you feel as though some causes, it seems like amongst the Muslim Ummah, get more attention than others? We were talking about the cause of Palestine, and it's one that definitely unites people of all, religiosity, but it seems like it also takes a spotlight, irregardless of whether it's, there's a current siege or not. People are very adamant about Palestine, but yet, some people, I've heard this from some people, not myself, but I've heard this from some people where they feel like, okay, where are the Palestinians when something's happening in Africa? Where are the Arabs when a flood is happening in Pakistan?
That's a valid concern. I don't necessarily disagree with that concern. And I think that, there are several reasons. Now, when it comes to Palestine, just from a psychological perspective, number one, Al-Aqsa, Masjid Al-Aqsa. This is the place where the Prophet ﷺ ascended to the heavens through.
Right.
This is where the Prophet ﷺ led the Anbiya in prayer. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says there is not a foot in Palestine, in Al-Quds in particular, Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem, except that a prophet has prayed there, or an angel has walked there, or subhanAllah, every square inch of that land is holy to us as Muslims. Also add to that this is an outside enemy that is committing the greatest human rights violation that we've seen in the last, in the last 100 years, right? We haven't seen anything like this before, like a people literally robbed of their identity and forced to live in well, I shouldn't say in the last 100 years. It is a Holocaust. It is an ethnic cleansing. Just as we condemn Hitler's Holocaust and the ethnic cleansing, this is also an ethnic cleansing. This is Israel's Holocaust. And yeah, this is, so there's a lot of, it's just so, and even with Americans and Canadians, you'll find that there are people that are incredibly passionate about this cause that are not Muslims. It's not even just Muslims gathering or rallying around this cause. It's just people in general. It's such a cruel thought that in this day and age, in the 21st century, something as gross of a human rights violation as Israel, as Israeli policy and Zionism can exist in our world today. So put that to one side, and then obviously it's an old cause too. It's a cause that has been going on since the late 40s. So it continues to raise those emotions. It's something that children grew up in the Muslim world, and any Muslim kid grew up knowing that the Palestinians are oppressed and that this is a land that we hope to get back one day, inshallah, and that this is something that we all are connected to. So, for example, when the issue with the Muslims in particular parts of China being forbidden from fasting, in Ramadan, when that came up, that's still a new cause. Burma was not really a cause that many Muslims were acquainted with. Central African Republic, I mean, let's be real. If you ask most Muslims, do you even know that there is such thing as something called the Central African Republic? They'd be like, what are you talking about, right? So that's not to belittle the importance of those. And I do agree with that notion. And I am someone that's quite vocal within Palestinian circles about solidarity with other movements and with other causes. It's not just, you can't just be about the Palestinian movement. You have to be about every cause within the Ummah and outside of the Ummah of innocent people and causes of humanity. How do we change that? I don't think the solution is to say, oh, why do you guys only care about Palestine? I think, always, a Muslim should always be productive. And this is something I was talking about in there as well, the lack of husn al-dhann, like the lack of good, just having good assumptions of people. We always suspect evil in people. Like instead of going off on someone and saying, what about, like I can tell you me, and I'm a human being, and I'm a deeply flawed individual. When someone goes off on me on my status, the only thing I do is I ban them. I just delete and ban. I don't even give them the time of the day. When someone says, Sheikh, I don't know if you're aware, but this just happened. Can you please post about it? I will happily post about it.
And actually, I see you're one of those people who will always retweet, you always repost, people send you things, you're always, I'm like, mashallah, Sheikh's very generous.
But when someone attacks, I just ban. I don't even read what you have to say, because the way that you brought it up, it takes away from your cause.
I always wondered because in my university days, I was, quite involved with the, anti-Israeli movement and anti-Zionist movement. And I know that actually a lot of people who were involved in those movements were non-Muslim. And,
the majority are actually
the majority. And a lot of times, though, I found that they are also like, very, I don't want to say deviant people, but there are a lot of people that are out there, different groups, I won't name them in particular, but different groups who we definitely don't agree with, fundamentally. To what extent are we allowed to collaborate with these groups? So, these groups that, for instance, have, different ideological beliefs than us, something that goes completely against our belief. How much can we work with them for a cause like Palestine or any other issue of the day?
That's a great question, and I fear that to answer it so broadly that some people will apply it to their specific situation. So I need the viewers to actually understand that, please don't take this and apply it to your particular organization.
It's not a group in particular, so we're not talking about any specific group, but groups that we theoretically disagree with.
Right. What I would say is that, look, it's not ethical that you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So even if I don't agree with your cause, I'll take your cause up as long as you take my cause up. This is a humanitarian cause. Feel free to support, but don't expect any validation for any ideas that we are against in principle and theologically. Don't expect us to take up those positions because you've recognized that there are innocent people being killed in Palestine and you've decided to support that. So I think that it's very, and I disagree with that as well, the approach that some Muslims take that
we should just automatically help them because they helped us.
Right. There's a
Right.
difference between cooperating for a united cause, not on an organizational level, not on an institutional level, and affiliating my organization, my student association, whatever it is, with another student association at an official level, that I fundamentally disagree with. So I don't, let me put it to you this way, and because I'll take something which I don't think has ever happened. Okay, let's say there was theoretically, there's a group that supports alcoholism, and that's all about getting drunk.
Well, there's a
right?
couple of those on my own
Yeah,
campus.
some
sororities and frats and
a
stuff.
sorority or frat that and we all know that the majority of them, let's not say we've got Alif Lam Mim and some things are going on, but the majority of these frats, whatever. But I'm saying, let's say that there's a group that is fundamental, that is basically an advocacy group for alcoholism.
Right.
Someone comes from that group and wants to support the Palestinian cause. That's fine. That's great. Feel free to join.
But will we scratch
But
their
I will
backs?
I will not ally myself with your institution or with your organization because you supported the Palestinian cause.
Right.
So that's what, and I know that's a pretty, out there analogy, but I hope that.
So the ends don't justify the means.
No, of course not. The ends don't justify the means in anything.
Right.
I mean,
what do you think about, like, with social media now, with, Twitter, Facebook, all these things? Like, you're quite active, I'm active, people are constantly out there posting things, different things are happening. Do you feel as though it's given way to the community finding out about more issues, or do you feel as though social media has become, more productive or counterproductive in the sense that it also is, kind of saturating, whatever issue of the day we could be focusing on, like local issues, things in our community?
I don't think, I wouldn't use the words counterproductive. I would say that, look, again, we should use it for its benefit. We should try to bring about positive change. I think there's, we have a lot of outrage trolls, which basically will pick up any issue which they feel like they can manipulate for the sake of personal benefit and exposure. We have a lot of those online, there's no doubt about it. And I do think that social media activism is becoming very condescending. Like, it's basically about how well you can tell people off, and I don't think that that's appropriate either.
Yeah.
I don't think it should stop at social media activism. I think social media can be used as a powerful tool to mobilize, to expose transgressions and injustices. I mean, we're seeing what's happening with Trayvon, with Ferguson, with Eric Garner, with so many people. I mean, speaking in American context, with police brutality. That stuff I'm from the South, that stuff has existed for a long time. I've had issues, not with police brutality, but with clear discrimination from police officers and things of that sort. So I do think that this gives us an opportunity to police the police and police the world as a people. To sort of hold authorities in check in many ways, which is a great thing. And it also gives us a chance to network better, to mobilize better. The activity that we have today, I mean, that we're part of today, how much more exposure does it get because of social media? It's an outlet of khair. So Islamically, what we do is, as Muslims, we always take flawed things and we try to perfect them. We always, the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah has written ihsan on everything. He's prescribed excellence in everything. There are ethics in social media. There's a way that you act. There's good adab in social media. You don't display bad adab on social media. And we all fall to it. I mean, because another problem with social media is that we all talk too much on social media.
Right.
So we have more opportunities to do good and also more pitfalls for ourselves as well to mess up and obviously social media is also very unforgiving when people make mistakes and when they fall. And we will all make mistakes, right? We've seen some of the popular Twitter scandals, right?
No names being mentioned, but we'll speak with him soon, though.
Come on, man. Why did you have to? But when someone makes a mistake, I mean, it's crazy how.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there are videos that I might have been having an off the cuff conversation with someone years ago. It ends up on YouTube and something's taken out of context, and the social media world is just so unforgiving. And as Muslims, we have to. I don't want to steer this to that level, but we have to give each other the benefit of a doubt. And also there's this idea that publicly correcting someone before privately reaching out to him is okay. I don't believe it's okay. I think that what's better from this, I would rather privately contact someone, give that person a chance. And I'm really not talking about a particular, I'm talking about in general.
Right.
Anyone. I would say even people that that we totally disagree with. Give that person a chance to correct themselves publicly. That way, you preserve the issue. You allow the person to correct himself, maintain his dignity. You avoid all the fitna and the fallout that happens, things of that sort. And I think, including myself, we don't do that enough. We just go for blood every time,
It seems like people are so, they have this idea that everyone's voice or opinion needs to be heard on every issue, right? Like, for instance, somebody does something like, they will feel then, okay, Sheikh Omar Suleiman made a mistake. Me, Joe Blow in, whatever city in whatever country feels like I need to then publicly, correct you.
Right.
And
Imam al-Shafi'i said there is no such thing as public nasiha. It's a public advice is a fadiha. It's an embarrassment. It's humiliation. You want to advise someone, you give them a heart-to-heart talk. And if that avenue is not there, then you publicly do what you have. But observe adab, like good manners. You know what I always tell people? That the Prophet ﷺ, some of his most beautiful ahadith are when he was angry. Like the angriest he ever got, Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that the maddest I've ever made him was whenever he kept on talking about Khadija radiallahu anha after she passed away. And then she said that one time I got jealous, and Aisha, out of her love for the ummah, I mean, we are her children, she is our mother. She tells us about these mistakes she made, right, so that we can learn from it. So she said, I got jealous, and I said that hasn't Allah replaced her with someone better than her? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his face got red, he got angry, and he said, Wallahi, Allah did not give me someone better than her. Then he just went on to praise Khadija. She believed in me when others didn't. She trusted me when others called me a liar. She spent on me when others deprived me. She had my children. He goes on to praise Khadija radiallahu anha. He did not attack Aisha radiallahu anha. Notice that he didn't say, who do you think you are? And put her down. Instead, he just extolled Khadija radiallahu anha. So when you're angry for the right reasons, there should be nothing unethical about the way you express that anger. If the way that you express that anger is in a way that's displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you can't claim that your anger was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was for something that was nafsi, that was personal in its nature. If it was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you will not do anything to offend the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your anger and in your correcting people.
There's still so many issues, I think, our communities coming from Canada, the US, that we as a community still need to address. When we do think about social activism, there's a lot of things within our own communities, within our own masajid that need to be, the issues of racism that still exist within our communities.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
Issues of, these things that a lot of times, I feel like even as Muslims, we're not ready to talk about yet. Do you feel as though there are now platforms being opened? Do you feel like this, trend will soon change, that we're actually going to be able to start, delving in, like you've heard of this whole unmosqued thing, and people are getting really in depth now with criticizing internally their community. To what extent can we criticize the community without becoming, just haters?
So, first of all, we need to realize unmosqued is in our societies, people are unchurched and unsynagogued as well. Just it's a huge generation gap as far as how Americans and Canadians or whatever, how we understand religion and how we understand the place of worship and so on and so forth. There is a generational gap. I don't think it's fair to assume that all of those that established masajid in the 70s and the 80s were backwards cavemen, right? That just screwed up in everything in life and just formed these there were mistakes, there were holes, there were flaws, and primarily, I mean, especially in immigrant communities, was the cultural baggage that was brought from overseas, from wherever they came from, and also the idea that we're going to be returning home anyway. So it wasn't home. America wasn't home. Canada wasn't home. So that's why Islamic schools, for the most part, started popping up more recently, in the last couple of decades, in the last 2 decades, because it was like, okay, well, maybe we are staying here, and our kids are actually starting to get messed up, and we can't, So I think that's definitely there as well. That aspect is there. I do think there's some value to having discussion, but the discussion should be productive. I'm not saying that I really do truly mean this. I think there's sincere people on all sides of this discussion. I really do mean, and I know some of the people personally on every side of the discussion. Alhamdulillah, I managed to keep myself pretty neutral on this discussion altogether. I see their concerns. Extremes bear extremes, though. Extremes bear extremes. And so I think that's what we're seeing as well. And this is a discussion that, unfortunately, that extreme reaction, the element of the extreme reaction, is manifesting itself in things that are also against Islam. So culture coming to a masjid to a point where, for example, women are not given a fair space. And I've been an advocate for, and I really do mean this before the unmosqued discussion, like for my wife, I have a daughter. You know, I want my wife and my daughter to feel just as comfortable when they go to a masjid as I do. I want them to benefit just as much from a khutbah as I do. I want them to be able to see the imam, to be able to pray in a nice clean space that's proportionate to the masjid and so on and so forth, where they have the nice chandeliers and the clean carpet as well. I've never liked the basements and
the closets in the back,
whatever they call
garage
them,
door,
right? That and subhanallah, I mean, that's the masjid should be a place for everybody. One of the projects, and I'm not trying to throw in a shameless plug here, but that we started is Muhsin, Muslims understanding and helping special education needs.
Okay, what is that about?
Primarily, you know, usually when we talk about disability awareness in the Muslim community, it's not just, the discussion is more advocacy, like, okay, you know, be more tolerant of kids with autism or with, but if I'm a parent with an autistic child and I try to come to the masjid with that child, is there any space for me?
Nope.
No, I'll just get yelled at. And I mean, and you know, my mother, rahmatullahi alayha, may Allah have mercy on her, you know, she had some issues in terms of physically moving around and also, you know, hearing or whatever it may be. And it was disgusting, the lack of support and things of that sort. So what I would love to see, and this is the goal of Muhsin, for example, is that we've unmosqued families with either children with disabilities or parents with disabilities. We've unmosqued those families
What's
as
the
well.
reaction been like?
Phenomenal so far, alhamdulillah. It's been great, alhamdulillah. We've got a Launch Good campaign up right now from Muhsin. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a website. We've registered as an organization, complete non-profit. This is just it's a dream, honestly, that those families are also finding, you know, access. They're not only being able to access the masjid, but there are facilities that can accommodate them. There are programs that can accommodate them to make them feel like they're part of the community. The Prophet ﷺ did not make anyone in the community feel awkward or left out. There's a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, an authentic hadith, he said that, don't stare at people with leprosy.
Right.
Don't look at them in a way that would make them feel uncomfortable. Also, the very, very famous story of Abdullah ibn Maktoum radiallahu ta'ala anhu running to the Prophet ﷺ and asking him questions while he's in the middle of a meeting with Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayth and so on and so forth, and Abu Jahl and the leaders of Quraysh. The Prophet ﷺ had made himself so accessible to this man that he had no limits, right? He had no barriers, right? In essence, he thought, if the Prophet ﷺ's out, I can interrupt him and ask him questions anytime. Because he was included in the community. The Prophet ﷺ made it a point to include everyone in the community. So racism is a serious issue in our community. You know, it's, look, you know, there's the Muslim ARC, Muslim Anti-Racism Collaborative. There are a few things that are out there, alhamdulillah.
Okay, I never heard of that.
Yeah, there are a few things that are gathering steam, alhamdulillah. And I think that the challenge for all of us as we challenge you know, the way that women are mistreated in the masajid actually, in the masjid system. The inappropriate hierarchies in the masajid, the power struggles, the politics, the racism, you know, families with disabilities. As we challenge those, we just need to be positive. We need to offer solutions. We need to actually come forth with a viable discussion that fits within our framework of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because if my response to you not treating women properly in the masjid is to do something also that's outside of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then I'm also a transgressor as well. My response should be to demand what the Prophet ﷺ demanded. And I've heard this from many sisters, and I agree with it, that we're sick of hearing about how Islam gave women rights 1400 years ago. Let's see it. Right? I mean, it's enough to just say, oh, Islam gave you great rights. All right, well, let's see it. I mean, the masjid, the facilities in the masajid are awful. And I think if the masajid are in accordance with the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we won't have the extreme reaction as well that also falls outside of what's permissible and what's acceptable. So we need to be productive and offer solutions, inshallah.
You know, just last couple of points, thinking about racism, one thing I like in the US, you know, it's a trend that you don't see many other places, that you do see a lot of people, you know, getting married from different races and cultures and communities coming together, and you see a lot of these kids now that just are beige, you know, just orange kids, which I think is so amazing because they don't have that issue. They're coming from so many different cultural backgrounds, stuff like that. So, I mean, that's one great thing that, just a random tidbit I wanted to throw in there that I think
mixed kids are beautiful.
Mixed kids are beautiful, and
smart
they defy racism internally, right? Because they are, you know, by all means, you know, collaborations of different cultures. So, anyways, that's all for this episode. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I really appreciate you giving us the time. I know you've been very busy, and we thank all of you for watching. Stay tuned for another episode of Hangout, inshallah, where we hang out with different great people like Sheikh Omar Suleiman. Jazakallah khair for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
كن سعيدا كن فريدا عش بفخر في الحياة لا تبالي فالمعالي